All right, so you made it. You made it to the other side and you finally want to find out how you can eliminate up to 50% of your electricity bill and protect yourself from the utility rate increases, without drastically changing your lifestyle, without using less of your thermostat or watching less Netflix marathons or getting new windows or just changing anything crazy about your lifestyle and just in saving more money. And in this video, you will learn how to do that. But in order to see how that works, we first have to cover why your electricity rates have gone up over time, making it harder and harder every single year with the rising costs, and why staying with your utility provider as a way to source electricity is a ticking time bomb in the near future. Okay, so if we take a look at this graph right here, this is a graph from the Energy Information Administration, and it's showing how much utility rates have increased over the past 20 years, right? The nominal price is actually the real price of the electricity that you have paid over the past 20 years. So if you look it up, in 2000, rates were right around 8 cents per kilowatt hour. And if we take the price per kilowatt hour in 2000 and the price per kilowatt hour in 2022, and we find the percent change, right? How much the price of electricity has changed over time, we can find out the price of electricity has increased 75%. That is crazy. It is almost doubled from $80 to $140. That's almost double the amount of what you paid 20 years ago. Now, why did the price of electricity increase so much over such a little period of time if we're paying for the exact same electricity and nothing really different, right? I haven't noticed my lights getting brighter or my phone's charging faster. It's been kind of the same exact kind of electricity since the past 20 years. And to understand why the utility companies have to raise rates, we have to understand how they work and how they make money. So we can look at the utility company and how it works in two separate buckets: capital expenses and operating expenses. Capital expenses are long-lasting physical assets, right? Such as transformers or the power lines in the big fields, buildings and batteries. And the utility companies can collect the cost of these investments from the customers and plus a profit from the investment in that infrastructure or the capital expenditure. The other expenses, operating expenses, right? This is such as salaries for employees, rent for offices, legal fees, and software. And the utility companies can collect the cost of these investments from you buying their electricity, but they cannot profit for the operating expenses of the company, right? Just like any other company like Apple, they cannot sell you their product and make a profit on the operating expenses. They can only make money on the infrastructure they build. So much more different than a regular company. But the typical set percentage that these utility companies make on capital expenditure is about 10%. So for example, if a utility company were to build $100 worth of new infrastructure, they would collect $110 from customers, pay $100 to build infrastructure, and they would be able to profit $10 from that infrastructure or capital expenditure. Everything seems pretty normal, right? It seems like a typically normal business, right? You spend money, you have an expense, and you make a profit. And but if the only way a utility company can make money is a small set percentage of profit on capital expenditure of infrastructure, what option do you think they would choose in this next example? So let's say a new apartment complex gets built in your area and it needs to connect to the utility grid for electricity. But the grid is at max capacity of electricity transmission, right? The utility grid cannot handle more electricity, so the utility company could go two routes. They could do project number one, which would be to implement more energy efficient technology and install some batteries to reduce demand so that the apartment complex could be added at a low cost of capital expenditure of $10 million, profiting them $1 million. Or they can take on project number two, which increases the amount of energy the grid can handle instead of focusing on energy efficiency, which costs $50 million in capital expenditure, making them $5 million in profit. And it's clear that if the only way they can make money is from a small percentage of infrastructure, they will want to spend as much money on capital infrastructure as possible so that they can make the most money as possible. And if you go look online at any utility company and how much they spend on infrastructure, you can see that there are a lot of examples of them overexpending on infrastructure so that they can make as much money as possible. But if they can't make money from the electricity and it's the only way they can make money is on infrastructure, how do they actually raise the 50 million to pay for the infrastructure and make money on it? Well, if they can't make money on the production and the selling of electricity, no bank or investor is going to lend their money out at a zero rate of return. So the main way they raise money is by getting in front of your local public utilities commission to get approval for a rate increase to raise your electricity rates to pay for the infrastructure projects so that they can profit on that. And that's why over time in this graph, your electricity rates have gone up, because the only way they can pay for the infrastructure is by raising your electricity rates. But you probably remember at the beginning of the presentation that I said this is a ticking time bomb. How is this actually a ticking time bomb, right? It's increased 75% over 20 years. That's not that big of a difference. An extra 60 bucks is not that big of a difference. But let me tell you why this could get much more worse and exponentially worse. And that's because our current electric grid looks like this. It could only handle electricity generation and transmission from one or a few central sources and distribute that to houses and businesses, right? But with more than 3 million homeowners utilizing rooftop solar to source their own electricity, it puts stress on the grid. And the grid wasn't made for that 100 years ago. It wasn't made for all these many, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of mini power plants to source and distribute electricity onto the grid. It was mainly made for one central location to make electricity. So in the near future, utility companies will have to invest hundreds of billions of dollars to make a grid that looks like this. The grid that supports electricity generation and transmission from thousands of different mini power plants, compared to a few major centralized power plants. Here is proof of this happening of utility companies investing in this infrastructure. So Duke Energy, they're planning to spend $56 billion in capital expenditure over 5 years to make the grid more reliable for renewable energy sources and for a grid like a decentralized grid like what I was talking about previously. But since 2013, Duke has spent $11.6 billion in capital expenditure, which made utility bills increase 48% since 2013. That made an average utility bill of $83 a month increase to $124 a month. Now, that was with $11.6 billion of capital infrastructure expenditure. They're planning to spend $56 billion, and that is way more than $11 billion. That is actually right around 5 times more than $11 billion. So for Duke Energy and many other utility providers to make the switch from the centralized power grid to the decentralized power grid, they will have to invest much more money than they have in the past, and your electricity bill will increase much more than it has in the past. But the utility company investing just in the decentralized power grid is only one part of the story. It actually gets much more worse and is a reason why your utility bill can increase exponentially over time. Okay, so this is why waiting to get solar panels is a ticking time bomb and why your electricity rates can increase exponentially. So let's say the utility company has 10 customers and they pay $10 a month. The utility company can use $100 a month to pay for infrastructure, right? Well, what happens when they need to build more infrastructure, or the cost to build the same infrastructure increases and they now need to spend $120 a month on infrastructure? Well, if we take 10 or 120 divided by 10, you now have to pay $12 a month, right? Well, what happens when they need to increase it to $130 a month? Well, you now need to pay $13 a month, right? And this has happened over the past 20 years. This is why the utility rates have increased 75%. But why is it a ticking time bomb? Why is it going to get exponentially worse? Well, here's why. Let's say they're now at $130 a month, but one person drops off and ends up getting solar. That person is now not buying electricity from the utility company. They're sourcing their own electricity from their solar panels. So now the utility company lost a customer, and these 9 customers have to make up for the $13 in revenue that they're gonna lose the next month. So now each 9 customers have to pay $14.44. So see how that works? The more and more people that drop off and the more infrastructure they need to build, the higher and higher your utility bill will get. So let's do another example. Let's say it increases to $150 a month they need to spend on infrastructure, and 3 people dropped off, okay? And you're one of the 7 still. Well, 150 divided by 7 is $21.42, right? If there was still 10 people and they needed to raise $150 a month, you would only need to pay $15. But because 3 people now have solar and don't buy electricity from the utility company, you got to pay $21.42. So that's why waiting to get solar and putting it off until it gets cheaper or whatever your reason is why it's a ticking time bomb, and your electricity rate is going to exponentially increase. So now, after understanding that you could see how the utility company needing to invest in renewable energy and infrastructure and losing customers every single day to rooftop solar is how your electricity bill can exponentially grow over time. These 2 variables paired together is very dangerous to how much you're going to be spending in electricity every single month. So the question really is, how can you protect yourself? How can you stop this from affecting, your money, your wealth, and your family over time? And one way you could do this is we need to, as homeowners, treat the utility company as the type of company they are. And that is an infrastructure company. We should not be buying electricity from them because the only way they make money is on infrastructure. So if we source our own electricity from solar panels, this is a much more economical option for homeowners, as they could pay up to 50% less for production of electricity from solar panels and protect themselves from the utility rate increases. So for example, this is an example of a graph of how much you could potentially save with solar panels compared to staying with the utility company. This black number here is the amount this customer would spend if they were to stay with the utility company over 25 years. And this blue number right here is how much they would spend over 25 years by investing in solar panels and sourcing electricity directly from their home. So for this customer specifically, they could be saving $121,000 over 25 years by getting solar panels. And you can see in this chart, the green is how much you would spend in solar panels. It stays the same every single month, so that payment is predictable every month. It's low every month, and there's no stress figuring out how much your payment is going to be next month. And in the blue, this is the utility company, like we discussed before. It's increasing exponentially over time. Now, solar isn't a one-size-fits solution, right? It's very specific on a few variables. And some people don't even qualify to get solar on their home. Your house could use much more energy or much less energy compared to someone else. And to determine how much you could save by getting solar panels, you would need 3 specific pieces of information. We would need to know your yearly kilowatt hour usage, your electricity rate per kilowatt hour, and the peak daily sun hours in your area. And once we have these 3 pieces of information, we'll be able to build a custom savings proposal showing you how much money you'll be able to save with your solar panels and what your electricity payment will look every single month when you actually have solar panels on your roof. And this is what this would look like, right? You would have a custom savings report. It would look obviously a little bit different, and you might save a little bit less depending on where you are, right? So this proposal most likely is in California because the rates are astronomical out there. But after we get that information, you'll be able to see how much you could save so that you could protect yourself from utility rate increases. And in the near future, dodge this ticking time bomb of this exponential growth of electricity rates increasing. So if you want to know how you could save money with solar panels and see what your savings proposal is, then click the button below this video and put in your information so that we could build you a custom savings report, showing you how much you'll be able to save and how much you'll be able to protect from the utility company taking from you and your family. So go ahead and click the button below, put some information in, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with a custom savings report showing you how much you would save over the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years.